So welcome everyone to session 4. You know, that session 3, I don't want to minimize any of these sessions, and strengths of course is important, and I'm a strengths coach, so I'm supposed to say that's the most important, whatever. That vision part to me is the most key. And we don't do it first because your strengths can help you. I always like the self-awareness portion of it. And I also like that when you're putting together your vision, your strengths can help provide some clues to where you're going. But I may have said this, well, I wouldn't have said it last week unless I recorded it. This is like a puzzle. You know, there's 9 sessions. And sometimes, you know, when you're putting together a big puzzle, the meat of the puzzle, right? The main picture sometimes doesn't come into focus until you start putting together the outskirts. So there's some people who in the first week are 50% of the way there with their vision, or 60 or 70, whatever. There's some people who it's like it clicks in week 8 or 9, because as they start looking at some of their objectives and where they want to go, that starts making more sense with their strengths. We're going to talk about values today, and they're like, oh, okay, I got it. So there's someone in one of my other classes, he's been working at it, and his portion was like, yeah, I came up with a vision statement pretty good, and it felt okay. He said, but it took me a long time to get one that I would be, this is his quote, that I would be comfortable tattooing on my chest. You know? So it's a process. So there's some people who I know they feel like they're behind or something. If you don't get it, don't worry, because it took me probably 2 months to really get that vision statement, my vision statement, where it needed to be and where I felt comfortable with it. And now it just rolls off my tongue. I feel so comfortable with it. Everything stems from it. And I do have for those of you who are online, but also if you're watching, there's a big portion today that I leave for Q&A, because that vision exercise, that vision session usually brings up a lot of questions. So if you're watching this recorded, shoot me your questions on Marco Polo, in Basecamp, wherever. Don't be hesitant to do that, because the vision usually, actually strengths and vision a lot of times create the most questions, but vision specifically because it is your life and how you wanted to define your life. So just as a quick overview here, and I'm just going to I know I do this like every session. About 2 minutes into the session, I always have this fear that I'm not recording. Okay, so I'm recording. So again, so this is the 9. It's like when you leave and you're like, did I close the garage door? Did I turn the oven off? And then you go back and you're 99% sure, but it's at 1%. Yeah. So, this is an overview of the Power and Purpose course. You know, we talked about your talent themes and your strengths. That's going to be a key theme throughout. And don't be hesitant as we go through. Listen, if you're behind, I know some of you said, oh, I'm a little bit behind in the course. That's fine. We're actually going to build in some weeks off so that you can catch up. I know I think we did that. Well, we kind of did that already. And so don't worry about it. Catch up at your own pace. Today, we're going to talk about vision more in the Q&A. I'm going to review, and then we're going to get to values. But again, if you're still, if you have questions in week 8 about your strengths, please, by all means, come in, because sometimes as you really start to get comfortable with them and you're going through like, and you may have a question about one of your objectives or one of your outcomes or one of your values. And a lot of it, go back to your strengths. And so there's some activities today that I'll leave you with. So just as a quick review, we talked about naming, aiming, and claiming those strengths. It starts with talent. It finishes with strength. Talent are everyone has muscles, right? Some people turn into bodybuilders. Some people are fit. Some people aren't. It's all about working those muscles out. It's about working those talents out to turn them into strengths. Of course, I like to call them superpowers. And it's all about being the best version of you. Often in our lives, we look at other people, keep up with the Joneses. We look at other people. I had someone in, the Freedom League Facebook group. This is a while back, and I did a quick strengths workshop in there. And his question was, I'm looking at my strengths, and my big challenge is I'm searching for successful people in my field who had the same strengths. And then he also said, I'm looking how I can use my strengths to generate profit. I said, you shouldn't look at it in those ways, because remember, from that video I shared at the very beginning, the likelihood that you will find your strengths twin, so someone, Leo, with your same top 5 in the same order is 1 in 33 million somewhere in the world. But even if you found that person had a different upbringing than you, different education, different experience, different skills. So to get to strengths, so I'm sorry, I said the same talents. To turn those talents into strengths, you have to combine all those things. That's what investing them is. So if you have someone, so I meet people with responsibility all the time. I have responsibility. It manifests itself in very different ways from them. So don't look at how other people, are successfully using their strengths and you have to do it the same way. It's all about becoming the best version of who you are. Then we got into the dominant, supporting, and lesser. If you haven't done that, shoot it, get in there. If you need to send those to me still, please send them to me. And let's look at where those dominant stop. And as you go through there, it's either hell yes or it's supporting, right? And then with your supporting, it's either, yeah, I see it sometimes, or it's no. So that's supporting and lesser. Everyone has all 34 talent themes. It's just the dominant and supporting are the ones that we use more often. And so, I don't have, my deliberative is extremely low. Yours might be extremely high. That doesn't make deliberative a weakness for me. It just means I call on it less. And in some cases, I have to figure out a way to maybe incorporate more deliberative into my life. My wife has deliberative and her dominant. So a lot of times I rely on her as a sounding board because I'm used to just getting impatient and I start running down the street. And so I can get into trouble sometimes. By the same token, sometimes deliberative people need some more activator in their lives. I'm actually working on a LinkedIn post. One of my biggest pet peeves is, when you come up in a merge lane and when you learn to drive, at least here in the United States, although I learned in Europe, I don't know if they teach people to drive in Europe. I think it's just all about forward motion, get in the turnabout and close your eyes and hold your breath and hope you don't die, right? So, but when you come up to a merge lane on a main thoroughfare of the highway, what are you supposed to not do? You're not supposed to stop. You're supposed to keep going and merge in. And so one of my pet peeves is when you come up to a merge lane and the person in front of me just stops dead. Because when you stop your forward motion and then you're afraid to merge in. You're afraid to that opportunity to go. And of course, I get, as an activator, I'm like, go, go, go. So my LinkedIn post is actually about 2 lessons. One is, if that's you, maybe you have deliberating in your top 5, you got to get some activator in your life and figure out how to do that. Because if you stop every time you come into an opportunity, you don't walk through those open doors. If you stop at those merge lanes of life, the odds are you're not going to go in, you're not going to go in, you're not going to go in. And it actually makes it more dangerous, right? Because then everyone's got to hit the brakes. You can cause a pileup. The second lesson is control the things you can. Me screaming in the car at the person in front of me, they're not hearing it. I'm not making them move. And so I kind of have to tamp down some of my activator in that regard as well. So dominant, supporting, lesser. And it's really about investing in your dominant and to some case you're supporting. Because as you go through, sometimes you can see, well, my supporting starts at 13, but man, that 13, when it combines with number 7, that's a real super strength. And Doug, I hope it was helpful in the Facebook group, some of those questions on strengths innovations. And please, let's continue that conversation because like you said, it's not a physical tool. It's more of a soft skill. And so really developing that mindset, looking at it almost as a physical tool helps. And when you really get it, a lot of times I look, and I always use this example because it's the one that gets me into trouble the most, is I got to tamp down my responsibility. Sometimes I got to hide that tool, because it causes me to do things I don't want to do sometimes. And so really getting comfortable and getting comfortable with those tools in your toolbox and how you can use them, how you can tamp some down, how you can draw from an activator or something else where you may be lacking. I have a one-on-one client who he has nothing in his influencing. And when we look at the best of me and those things, it's all about, he wants to be seen as a nice guy. He wants to be the nice guy that everyone loves. And, he's got all those relationship building themes. His big challenge is He takes on a lot of clients he shouldn't take on because he has trouble saying no. He has trouble saying no to some family members who want things. And so I told him he might have to look at getting a little more bad cop in him. The ability to say no. He's got no influencing, so he doesn't have that. And actually the executing he does have is responsibility. So that almost contributes to that nice guy. He feels a responsibility to be a nice guy. So we're working on what can we draw from some other buckets, from some other domains to compensate for some influencing. So when you have a clear, you have that clarity of vision when things come up, your first priority isn't being a nice guy. It's, hey, you have empathy, have some empathy for yourself, have some responsibility for yourself in terms of that vision you want to achieve and move forward. So that's a real important point. And Doug, I'm glad you asked that question. And in the Facebook group, man, there was a ton of responses, which I loved. Not all the responses were on target, but I love that kind of engagement. And I actually, people brought up some things that I hadn't thought of. So I really love that. And again, here at 4 Domains of Strength, I just kind of got ahead of myself there. So then last session, we talked about defining your purpose. And, this is going to be a theme as we go through, and it's about living that outcomes-based life. And, that first outcome is your vision statement and really focusing on that and working your way backwards. I may have mentioned this in another session, Power and Purpose. I had someone who was like, hey, I kept asking him for his vision statement, but he would respond with things like, my wife said I would be a coach. Do you think I'd be a good coach? I say, I don't know. What's your vision? What's your purpose? Oh, okay. And then it would be a symbol. And I said, listen, I'm not Shark Tank. I'm not you don't come to me with a business idea and I say, crappy idea. Does it move you toward your vision? And so it's all about defining that and then working your way backwards. And so then, we're going to talk about setting those big audacious objectives. We're going to talk about those clear incomes, but it all starts with that outcome you want for your life, that vision statement, that purpose on how you want it defined. And so your purpose is that the top of the mountain, the summit, having a clear vision of that destination, right? And you're going to use your strengths to get there. Because as you go, right, whether it's business, life, or business, family, or self, right? There's going to be things that get in your way. There's going to be customers, right? Customers that are a problem. Customers you got to figure out how to deal with, maybe cut free. There's going to be other challenges that come your way. Family problems, relationship problems, whatever it is. My goodness, I'm in the process of planning for 2019 and doing not only my outcomes, but then some revenue goals and other things and how I'm going to finish up the year. We got a guy come in and we were having some allergy problems and he tests our house. So literally 10 minutes before I get on this call, I find out that we have a mold problem. Okay. A couple years ago, I might have had an anxiety attack, because it could be thousands of dollars. That's a gut punch, right? So back in January, our hot water heater burst during record cold. Then our AC went out. We had to get an entire new system. It was $18,000. I did not budget for that, right? Literally a couple years ago, I'm going to have a LinkedIn post about this today. I used to have major anxiety attacks where I thought I was having heart attacks. I thought I had ulcers. That's how I used to deal with challenges like that. I can't control it. But when you have a clear vision of your purpose and life knocks you on your ass, knocks you off the path, it's easier to get up and look like, okay, 5 years from now, am I even going to remember this challenge? I might remember it and be able to say, oh my gosh, remember when the hot water heater burst? Oh, that sucked. But you're 5 years ahead. You're moving toward your vision. So other challenges are going to come your way. Family challenges, everyone I meet, the more I have challenges with my extended family, in-laws, parents, things like that, the more I realize that everyone does. So these things happen. Critics. I know people who are trying to do personal branding campaigns, marketing campaigns, and they start producing content and then they get trolls, critics, haters. Sometimes the critics are your quote unquote best friends, right? I learned I wasn't supposed to be on a group text with some of my high school friends, my best high school friends. And I found out they had a whole string making fun of me for my LinkedIn videos and just totally ripping on me on the superhero shirts. They're done now. I've cut them out. It was one of the toughest things. The Stephen Covey, you are the 5 people you hang around with. It's absolutely true. But in some cases, there are parents. You know, my wife and I, we live our lives very differently. You know, why in the world would you shut down your agency? You know, that's my father-in-law. Why in the world would you move by the beach when the entire family lives in Illinois? Why in the world would you homeschool your kids? Don't you know that that's like child abuse? You know, those types of things. Everyone has critics that sometimes are your friends, sometimes they're people you don't know. And so if you have a clearly defined purpose, if you know your strengths to get there, remember, it's not just about self-awareness and, oh, great, I know I have responsibility and activator and learner. It's also as you're going and meeting all of these things and you're walking up the mountain and these things happen to you, what are those tools in your backpack that you're going to use to do it? How you deal with a challenge is totally different than I do, based on not only your talent themes, but when you're combining those with your skills, your experience, your knowledge, et cetera. And today we're going to start talking about values. And those three things combined, I like to say they make you bulletproof, because as those slings and arrows are coming at you, as the bullets, they start bouncing off you because you know where you're going to go and you just don't care about it. So we talked about that life sentence, you know, defining if you were going to die later today or 40 years from now, what is that one sentence, one or two sentences that you would want people to say about you that defines everything? And it's not just work. It's work, family, and self. And all three of those things should combine. And because, especially if you're an entrepreneur, I know a lot of people on here are entrepreneurs, your company is an extension of yourself. And if it's not, there's going to be a problem, right? Because if your work objectives are going over here and your strengths and your vision and your values are going over here, you're going to hit a wall. And one day you're going to realize, I really hate this job. I know from experience, right? But also how you are building your career. If you're not an entrepreneur, if you're building your career this way and everything you want to do, remember we talked about likes, loves, hates, your best days, when you got the best of you, if that's going in the opposite direction. I had someone in my other course, she started putting down the things she loved, liked, you know, where she wanted to go. They wanted to move to another state. She wanted to be a realtor, wanted to get into a whole new lifestyle. But up till then, all her objectives had to do with staying at a 9-to-5 corporate job, none of which was on her. If she waved a magic wand tomorrow, what would her perfect lifestyle be? And so I don't tell her what to do. I just point it out. Do you think you're going to hit a wall somewhere where you're heading is totally different than where you want to be? And it turned out there were some mindset things there. There were some lack of communication between her and her spouse on some of those things. And so really defining that purpose and so it aligns with your strengths. There's some clues in your strengths and where you want to go. And again, I can't say this enough. If you watched the session last week and you've come to this point, you're like, I can't think of it. Oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. Some people get it pretty quickly. It took me 2 months to get it. It's going to take some of you a long time to get it. Some of you may be 50% there. I'm going to keep asking you, how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel? How does it make you feel? How does that line up with your work? How does it line up with your family? How does it line up with yourself? And so I'll just keep asking those questions until it gets to the point where you're comfortable with it. There's no right or wrong answer, right? But I can help guide you if I think maybe you're unsure of it and maybe it's not where you want to go. So when you think of it, keep it short, aspirational, inspirational, and motivational, right? So some people come in and they're like, oh, well, that's so broad. It should be broad, yet kind of specific too, and short, right? Mine is saving the world by helping individuals fight for freedom and fulfillment. Okay, that's broad, right? But the devil is in the details of what we're going to build onto it for the next 6 weeks, building the objectives, the outcomes, so that every day I'm moving toward that. So that, listen, I have sales calls sometimes that just go bad. The last week, it's actually not been that the sales calls have gone bad. It's been that I've had 3 people say, yes, I'm in. And then they've totally ghosted me online. Like totally to the point where I'm like, just send me a no, just so I can cross you off. And they just ghost online. But during that time, I'm getting some messages from people. I've gotten 3 messages about my podcast, about how it helped them on a specific day and how it, so I'm not basing every outcome and everything, and my vision isn't based on money. If it was based on money, those 3 days when I just had really crappy sales calls would have destroyed me. right? Because I didn't have a clear vision of where I want to go. But my vision is helping people fight for lives of freedom and fulfillment. So when I get a message that I got a message from someone says, I listen to your podcast every day when I walk the dog, and I've had some really crappy days and I was ready to give it up, and I listen to your podcast and it helped me. To me, I accomplished my vision that day. That's a win. And so it doesn't all have to be about money. Listen, I'm not saying it's easy, right? Again, when you get knocked off that path, it doesn't feel good. It hurts. But if you have a clear, if you have clarity of vision and where you're going, it's easier to get back on that path, dust yourself off, and keep walking and put it in the rearview mirror. I'm not saying it's easy. It is easier said than done. But if you don't have that vision, a lot of times you just stay down, you stay off the path, and you start spiraling in despair. And again, as you think about this, and you're going to see this slide numerous times as we go and hear me say it, no buts allowed. When you're setting that vision, put your head in the clouds. Don't think of challenges. Don't think of, oh, I really want to do this, but we're going to get to challenges later on. I don't want you to start thinking about that yet. We'll get there. But put your head in the clouds. If you had a magic wand to wave, man, how do you want your life to be? Let's define that. Paint a clear picture of it. You don't need permission from me to do that. You don't need permission from anyone to do that. Just draw it out. I won't tell anyone. I promise. And you don't have to worry about telling me. So paint a picture of really what you want your life to be. And we'll get to those buts, those challenges later. So right now I want to pause and see here. And if you're watching recorded, take some time, stop this, pause it. And I want you to take some time and write down some questions. And then I want to throw out to Leo and Doug. If you have any questions at this point, you can ask questions about strengths. You can ask them about vision. Ask me about anything at this point.
Kurt, this is Leo. I took the first stab at the vision statement. I mean, as far as, letting you know what that was, I posted it up in Basecamp, and it was challenging to do the all-encompassing, I thought. At least I wanted it to reference everything as far as, like you said, family and all that. And I guess I feel like you said, the devil's in the details. Like, okay, it could be extrapolated to encompass family, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit challenged there. Is that something where you feel like if it's not calling out the family aspect or the other aspects of the life specifically, then that's going to come out when you're building your business and you're going to run into the wall, like you said?
Yeah. So I think it's and I'll shoot you this in Basecamp too, but I just want you to think it doesn't specifically have to call out your family, but you should be able to answer the question, how does this vision work with your work? How does it impact your family? How does it impact yourself? And if you have trouble answering those three questions, then maybe start recrafting it. For me, my vision came out of struggles that I had, waking up every day and feeling like I was being controlled by an invisible puppeteer. I'd wake up in the morning nervous every morning, like, oh my gosh, what do I got to do? Maybe I said this on a previous call, but I had a client, I'm not kidding you, who would only call me when I got in the shower or sat down on the toilet. And it got to be, I told it as a joke to a friend, and then it kept happening. I was like, is there energy in the universe? He knows that, right? And then he would get really snippy. You never answer the phone. You never answer the call. I had another client who would, whatever. But it was the same thing. If I didn't answer calls and I wasn't there, and it contributed to this, I wake up in the morning like, oh my gosh, I got to check my email. What's my first call in the morning? I got to make that conference call, those types of things. And so I just wanted freedom. I started my company because I wanted freedom. And then I built a prison. So to me, getting to that notion of what I really wanted, it was freedom. But by the same token, the way that my wife and I had always talked about raising our kids was in a different sort of way and giving them some freedom, et cetera. So it really came out that for myself, here's the reason I was building a business, and here's the reason that I struggled and missed the point when I built it. And that word freedom really came out to me. So for me, it almost started with the self and then built outwards in terms of, and then as we go, we're going to talk about values as we go as well. You know, one of my top values is family. So I built a company where I wasn't seeing my family. I was up in my home office or traveling all the time. So it didn't fit my values. And so it branched out from there to the point where, listen, if I'm building a company that doesn't fit all of those things, then I'm not going to be in alignment and I'm not going to be happy with it. So it's not necessarily that you have to build a company like work around your family, but if it's going to move you in the opposite direction of family and self in whatever way, stress, not being present, traveling, whatever, health, you know, yourself, et cetera, then maybe you got to figure out something that gets you more in alignment with that vision. You know, coaching, obviously, freedom and fulfillment, working with you all here helps me achieve that. You know, the way we try to, you know, it's self-directed, but the way our children's education works, bringing them into Europe, those types of things, you know, freedom and fulfillment, we think with that. And then, you know, with my wife and I too, try to do that. And then myself, you know, I constantly audit my days and my weeks. If there's days where I felt like I was under the thumb of anything, and now it doesn't happen with clients as much as it used to, but now it happens more with how I schedule my days, or I figure out times that work for me when I schedule these calls. And I try to accommodate a number of different time zones because we have people in Europe and people, you know. And so at the end of the day, I fine tune. It's like, I felt really free this week. I didn't feel like I was under the thumb. Okay, I'm moving in the right direction on all accounts. So it was a long answer, but does that make sense?
It does make sense. But now, maybe you mentioned this before and I just didn't pick up on it, but the vision statement's really just for you, right? I mean, it's not like a vision statement of a company, right? Where it might be on a website. And I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily make sense to onlookers. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. No, absolutely. I throw mine out there a lot just because it's part of my brand. I've decided to make it part of my brand, if that makes sense. I think it shouldn't be something that you are afraid to tell people. It shouldn't be something that it's hard for you to understand, from a brand perspective, I always say your purpose is your brand. And so as you build that brand, if it's totally different than who you are, fundamentally, then maybe there's a problem with it. People are going to know that. I live my purpose. And so if I didn't do that, then people would call fraud. And there's a lot of those people on LinkedIn, by the way. So.
Well, and I don't have any problem, like at least with my first draft that I wrote up, as far as whether I had it on a site. I think though that as I went through a lot of iterations, I wrote ones that were a little more complicated. And I think that what I want to do, say with my coaching or mentoring, I want to bring people some information. Obviously not unlike what you're doing, but bring people some information that maybe changes the way they construct thought. And so my vision statement is kind of somebody who's on the other side, right? Who has that information. So it might be confusing to someone who hasn't already been pushed through the process. So I'm wondering if you should kind of milk toast it to so that when people read it, it's a little bit more consumable, even though they could get there after having worked with me, that type of thing.
Yeah. So two things on that. One, and I'm looking over here because I have it up on my phone, your vision statement. One is I might challenge you to just even simplify it a little more and shorten it a little bit. But the word milquetoast, and as you probably figure, never milquetoast anything. The people who try to milquetoast or vanilla it don't. I had an article saying called "Why You Shouldn't Be Afraid to Piss More People Off." This is maybe 2 months ago. And it's funny because it actually pissed people off. And now many of the people who were pissed off by it didn't read the article, and they thought I was literally about like go up to people on the street and piss them off, right? One guy's like, I read your article, but you should read Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. And one of my friends here in Charleston is a Dale Carnegie coach. He's like, yeah, you realize Dale Carnegie pissed a lot of people off in his life. It wasn't about pissing people off. It was about what I talked about earlier. If how you live your life, and you live your life with that clear vision, and you're proud of it, and you're not afraid to say it, and that pisses people off because maybe they're jealous, maybe because it's outside of the bounds of what they thought. I use homecoming. I use homeschooling as an example, not because I'm advocating you should homeschool or anything like that. I do it because it's an example where what we're doing has nothing to do with you. So why are you so fired up over it? And it's a variety of reasons. Sometimes when you step out and do things different from how they were taught to believe in their lives, they just can't. I had a friend that from junior high, and then we actually roomed together after college, and he called me for some coaching a couple weeks ago. And he's like, I got to tell you something. He's like, I had this conversation. He's like, do you remember Joe? I'm not going to say the guy's name, but Joe so-and-so. And I said, I knew him, but he went to a different high school. Like he didn't go to my high school. And he said, yeah. He's like, well, he called me out of the blue today. And I said, hey, do you remember Kurt Mercadante? And he goes, I don't remember him from high school. He said, but I watch all his videos on LinkedIn. Man, he annoys me. He annoys the hell out of me. And so Chris, it was interesting. Chris is like, and I got defensive. And I said, well, why does he annoy you? And they got into a back and forth. So the two things from that. One is I told Chris, I said, I love that. If I can make someone so fired up that they are pissed off at me or annoyed at me and they can't even tell you why, then I guarantee there's people on the other side who I've stirred some sort of emotion with. And I know that based on some of the messages I get, like heart-wrenching messages I get, right? By the same token, they were fighting about me, arguing, and I didn't even know it. If I milk toasted it, this beard, one of the reasons I grew the beard was because when I had clients up in DC, I had clients who would say, you really should cut that beard because it's going to set anything. The more people who said that, the longer this sucker grew. Because to me, and it was part of it, and I hadn't yet gotten that clear vision, freedom. And when you tell me not to do something, boom, I'm going to do it. There's some people I said, I did a video, what's your biggest challenge today? I had some guy message me and say, my biggest challenge is that I got to look at your ugly effing beard. He spelled it out every day or every week, right? I laughed at that because I have a clear vision of where I want to go. And for whatever reason, the way I'm doing it, and I don't milk toast it. If you watch my videos, I don't give a shit, people, so don't milk toast it. Don't go at it. There's the riches are in the niches. And there's a lot of vanilla milquetoast people out there that I really can't tell what they do. And so don't be afraid to choose a side. Pick a side and go for it and test it. But in the end, if you're milk toasting it when you don't really want to, then that's where things are not going to align with your values and who you are. And that's where you're going to have an issue. But also just from a business perspective, listen, you may love Trump. You may hate Trump, right? And I totally get both sides. But remember he said he could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and his supporters would still love him? It's probably not far off from the truth. And I'm not saying be like Trump, but what I'm saying is, he chose a side, he goes for it, and there's people who are dying for him. I'm not saying to be like Trump, but what I'm saying is don't be afraid.
He's in his niche. Yeah.
Exactly. And remember there was a movie, Warren Beatty, back in the 90s called Bullworth. Mm-hmm. And he was sick of milk toasting it. He was sick of doing this. And he basically started saying everything, and he grew a following. That's how you build your tribe. Apple is so happy that there are people, I'll bring up Apple. What do you use? I use iPhone. There are people who get so fired up. oh, Apple, the evil empire, and how do you use that? And Apple and their closed system, they get so fired up of it. You know, Apple is fine with that because you know what? They launch a new phone and people line up around the block in the rain. So they're happy to piss people off because they have a core group. I don't see people lining up for Samsungs. I don't see people lining up, and I'm not taking a position on it. I'm an Apple fanboy, but so yeah. So I get fired up on that. Just, you know, go for it. Don't milquetoast it. Pick a side.
Now, when you developed your mission statement, did you do a lot of versions, or was it very apparent to you
It started
right from
off,
the start?
you know, I knew freedom was going to be in there. At the end, you'll see kind of a personal performance roadmap that you're going to have. I worked in the superhero theme. There were things that were all out there in the ether, and I wasn't afraid. You know what? I was afraid. I had to get to a point where I wasn't afraid to bring in corny, to bring in stuff from my childhood, to bring in the fact that I'm a total superhero nerd, and like my kids and I are addicted to Marvel movies and whatever. And I bring that in, you know, I bring that into my everything I do. So actually my personal performance roadmap starts with, my name's Kurt and I'm a superhero. And I save the world by helping people fight for lives of freedom and fulfillment. When I first started crafting it, oh my gosh, I could never say that to anyone. That sounds so corny. I thought of those 5 jackasses from high school. Oh my gosh, what if they ever saw it? And then I just had to get to a point where it was like, screw them. If someone doesn't want to hire me because I wear a superhero shirt, I had one guy comment, you know, I had a picture of me in my superhero shirt on an article, and it was about self-awareness. He's like, I might not be self-aware, but I'm not the one wearing the superhero shirt. You know, and I was like, I don't know what my comment was, but I think it was the verbal equivalent of the middle finger. You know, once you start really getting so comfortable with that vision statement that you don't care telling people about it, that you don't care about getting out there, then that's when it's like, yeah, this is mine. I'm going to put on this armor and I'm happy with it.
Was there, when you really focused and hit the coaching hard and developed all that, was there one particular like reaction from someone in your life that you were totally either just waiting that it was going to happen, or you were surprised by? What was that?
Are you talking like good or bad?
I guess it could be either, really.
Yeah. Well, so the first one was, I did a video. So I started doing videos, right? I did a video every day for like 90 days. And I had on suits. Well, you can't probably find them. If you go on YouTube, it's there. And I would have on sport jackets. And I would have on nice shirts. And or a polo shirt. And it would talk about the importance of strengths. And my program does this. And you would do this, right? And it just didn't feel like me. And so I would do that. And so finally it started getting, and my coach started pushing me. And he's like, when we get on these calls, you get fired up about this or that. And then I look at your videos like, what the hell? It's not you. So I don't remember the progression of things, but I progressively started doing it. And so one day I was like, listen, strengths are boring. I want to talk about superpowers. That's what I do. My daughter and I have we have Marvel marathons like every other week, right? And DC too. We love the DC movies kind of stuff. So there was a video I did where I put on a Batman mask. And I did a whole video. The Justice League was coming out. And it was all about, listen, there's Wonder Woman, there's Aquaman, there's the Flash, who have these superhuman powers, right? And then there's Batman. And Aquaman even says, no offense, but you got no powers, man. Now, Batman could just sit there and be like, oh my gosh, I'm nothing. I have imposter syndrome. I can't do anything. But you know who the leader of the group is? It's him. Because he's smart. He uses his brain. He figures out a way to get out of things. Anyways, I did that video. I put the Batman mask on. My high school friends, they found it. They were passing it around. My mom had a comment too, and some people did. But I also got a shit ton of emails from people. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're saying. Can we schedule a call? Then there was another one, kind of bringing in the freedom. I did a post about how I felt trapped, how I built a business instead of a prison, and freedom and escaping. I think the Batman thing was probably right around there because that was right around when Justice League. So November, December. And when I did those, I got 3 clients in the first week because people were like, listen, if you are going through something, if there's a reason you're motivated to start coaching and mentoring, there's 500 and something million people on LinkedIn. If you're going through something, there's 1 million plus people going through the same exact thing. And so that's why don't be afraid of living your purpose because there's those people. It's finding your tribe. When I do videos I did a video yesterday about, listen, my life's not perfect. I have shitty days. The mold, the water heater, people get sick, extended family problems. I have crappy sales calls. I got a ton of emails saying, oh my gosh, I got the same thing. Let's talk. Because I wasn't afraid to say, listen, things suck sometimes, and so that's really about owning it and becoming comfortable with it. But it's a process. I wasn't like overnight, like, yeah, man, I'll do it, because I had been conditioned in a corporate environment for so long. But I really started having my middle finger moment to the entire thing. And I'm like, I feel so unfree that I was like, I broke, now I wear sport coats, but it's with jeans and a superhero shirt.
Right.
When anyone tells me you really got to shave your beard, watch, it actually gets longer that month, until my wife's like, you really got to cut the beard, so yeah. But it is a process. I can't say overnight. It's like, oh, you're comfortable. Just feel comfortable going on and doing it. It's small steps. Do a little something. It's like with LinkedIn video. Richard Moore, who's a sales guru, said his advice for someone who can't get the courage to do a LinkedIn video is literally go out and do a 6-second video that says, this is my first thing LinkedIn video. I'm really scared to do this. Thank you. Just do that, and walk away. You're going to get a lot of people who come like, oh, I was there. The same thing. And here's some tips. So, yeah.
Cool.
But there's people out there who do videos who I know they coach shop, and they've called me and they've called another coach and they've called another coach telling them, my life sucks. Oh my gosh, I'm so unproductive. I can't get out of my own way. And then they'll do a video talking about how wonderful they are. And you need to live a life like me. And here's how you should live your life. And it's like, don't do that until you get your stuff together, Right. And of course they would never hire a coach because they don't want the life preserver, So, so anyways. So Doug, any question? I know you're driving, Doug, so I don't want you to crash either.
So no, those are some great questions on that. And your attitude. You sure you don't live in Texas? Because not giving a shit about somebody else. That's a good attitude to have here.
I love Texas, and I actually, when I was in Austin 2 years ago, I wanted to get like a wall size graphic of the Come and Get It. The San,
yeah.
Was it San Jacinto? I wanted to get
Gonzalez.
that. Yeah. So that, but I'm in the South, so it's all, it's all the same.
So there'll be a flag coming your way. I'll get your address later.
Nice. Thank you.
But and I want it in the background of a video or something on that. That's the cost of it.
Absolutely.
So as I was I thought I'd honed my vision statement down a little bit. Now I'm looking at it, and it's a little, as we're talking, maybe it's a little milk toastish. I'll get it out in a minute. Or maybe it's not clear enough. I don't know. Some feedback on that would be.
Yeah. Let me take a look at it.
The Facebook group was great. Yeah, the Facebook group, that feedback was great. I mean, like I said, it was holy cow. I really appreciate that. That helped sort of me get through my head and understand it.
Awesome. And by the way, I said this to Leo offline, but for anyone listening who's in the Freedom League is going to change fundamentally. And there's going to be a couple different groups that segment by kind of your situation. So it's going to be more personalized to you and your situation. So, but that's just so you're not shocked when I do that, but I'll be in touch with you about that. Because while that post was great and a lot of engagement, there's some that aren't. And I want to, there's going to be some different programs. So that's total digression. By the way, I do need, if you can pause 1 second, I got to show you this one because we were talking about graphics and superheroes. Hold on real quick. So you talk about living things and your brand. You know, it's not just about, I don't think your brand can just be about what you do publicly. It's got to be about what you have here, you know, locally. And locally meaning in your own life, right? So I have this, and actually there was an artist I met on LinkedIn who does monster pictures, right? But he does some superhero stuff, and I saw it, and I'm like, I need one of those. So I commissioned it. But I don't know if you can see it, but it's me as Batman. And so he did this, and it's just like, we love it. And I got to hang it up in here. Actually, I'm bad at hanging things, so my wife has to hang stuff for me. But yeah, so it's those things that surround yourself in your life with that purpose and exude it. You know, it should sweat out your pores, and people should know it. Whether or not you put it on a website, whatever. But I use it as that guiding star. Because especially if you know, Leo, I want you to think, and Doug, because you're going to get into this as well in terms of business. What inspired you to do that? You know, what really gets your juices flowing about coaching something, about mentoring? What was the spark that made you think, I really want to go into that? And when you talk about those things, when that exudes, your clients are going to get inspired. And they're going to be like, yeah, give me some of that, you know? And so, you know, as you think about your purpose, that's, you know, really think about that aspirational, motivational. It's like, you know, mine is like fight for freedom and fulfillment. I didn't say attain or obtain it, because man, you got to fight for it. You got to go for it. You got to go. So those are some other things to keep in mind as well. And yes, Doug, that would be awesome. The graphic, by the way, come and get it. I just loved it. They had a big one. I had a meeting over at the Texas Association of Business. This is back when I had my PR firm, and they had a big graphic there. And I'm like, I want some of that. And of course I went and I got some Allen Brothers boots too. So as it gets colder here, so I am a Texan maybe at heart. It also helps me. I'm 5'4". Those help me gain an inch of height.
Well, you got a little ZZ Top looking going on too with the beard. So
yeah. When I get that going, and you know, I don't wear the cowboy hat. That might be pushing a little too far. But you know, if someone told me not to, I'd probably wear one then. You know.
You know, Kurt, I got to tell you, when you finally said that you were short, I had no idea. You come off like a 6'5" person on on LinkedIn and everywhere else.
I get that so much, and it's funny that when I've gone to LinkedIn Locals to speak, people are like, "What?" And it's there's a video. I'll put it in Basecamp. It's pretty funny. I don't know how many of you know Mike Cassavant. He hasn't been on LinkedIn a lot. He used to do more videos. He's awesome. He's a sales guru. Good friend of mine. And I went up to Milwaukee and met Quentin Allums, you know, Quentin and some of them. And anyways, there's a picture of Mike and I. Now, Mike is probably 6'4", but like he's a power lifter. I mean, Mike is 300 pounds. I don't know. And I'm short, but I'm stocky. I'm big. Like it looks like he's got me in his arm. It literally looks like I'm his son, his baby son, and he could put me in his pocket. It's really funny. But I'll walk in, the first LinkedIn local I ever went to last January in San Diego, I walk in and I don't know, Brian Schulman, he does a lot of videos on there. I walk in, Brian is like exactly my height. So I walk in and look at him. He goes, I thought you were taller. I'm like, I thought you were taller. And so I meet people, and it's funny because Quentin went to a LinkedIn local, I think in Dallas, and they're talking like, have you met Kurt? Have you met Kurt? Because they knew we were friends. And he's like, why? Everyone thinks you're tall, man. Everyone thinks you're like so tall. And he's like, yeah, I met him. He's short. So it's funny. It's funny about that.
Maybe it's the beard. Maybe it's lengthening or something.
Yeah. It was funny. One guy, so Kyle Witham, you know, the call.
Yeah.
I walked in and the Kyles were like, yeah, we thought you were taller. And Kyle looks at me and he's like, I thought you were bigger, man. I thought you were more muscular. And I was like, oh, no. That one comment actually like I totally changed up my weight, like, like I started hitting the weights, longer, but anyways. So as you go through, that's a question. So we've talked about this. This is a question I get a lot. Is my vision statement too broad? And again, the devil's in the details, but I think it should inspire you. If it's broad, but you're like, then yes, it's too broad. If it doesn't answer those questions, work, family, self, if it's so broad that maybe it's a little milquetoast, if it's so broad that it's a little, you don't feel excited about it, that's when it's too broad. Mine could be too broad if it didn't check those boxes. I've had this question, why is it so hard to come up with my vision statement? Because maybe you've never thought about it. A lot of the things we talked about, that's why it's hard. It's got to be that, what's that spark? What's it, feel comfortable to if I had to tell people about it, that's why it can be so hard. I've talked about this. I get that question, why do I think it'd be good at X job? Do you think I'd be a good coach? Well, that's not for me to determine. What's your vision? What's your values? What's your strengths? It's within you to determine if that's good, if that fits it. I've had this. Why is it easier to help someone come up with my vision statement myself? Because that's the way it is. It's why I have a coach. Coaching someone else, and my wife will always say, well, what would you tell one of your clients? I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's tougher. I once ran for office. I ran for office twice and lost. The second time by 40 votes, right? The thing that made me almost win the second time was the first time I was my own campaign manager. Stupid, right? It's like the lawyer who represents his or herself. It's just hard you don't have that bird's eye view. So these are just some questions I've had from you all, and then other people that I've tried to, a lot of them I've answered here. We've talked about this, the 4 domains of strength. So anyways.
So on the 4 domains of strength,
yeah.
Is that, I want to say ideally, but really it doesn't matter where they fall. It's just there for you to focus. It doesn't mean, okay, look, if I don't have any executing, that I'm screwed. It just means, look, here's where you're heavy. So figure out how you can use those to your advantage to supplement, what you're not getting out of the other categories, right?
That's exactly right. So when I did this, for the first time, and I was in my PR and ad agency, and I looked and I did this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my relationship building domain is almost empty. Okay, well, the way I had built my agency, I was like, I don't really need that. I'll focus on this, and this. Okay. When I switch and I'm going to be a coach, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like empty in relationship building. What the heck? Coaching's all about relationship building. So what I had to do was like, okay, how do I get there? My learner is my number one. I use learning a lot. Questions that I ask you all help me to learn more about you. I can get that back out to you either here. I have intellection. So later today, I'm going to go take a long walk. And a lot of your questions today, that's why sometimes I may come back later. Hey, I was thinking about this, or I may shoot you a Marco Polo. Those types of things. The questions you asked today help me improve for the next session and the next session. And so I use my learner. It's not in a relationship building, but I use it as that. Communication for me is number 6 or 7 competition. I always get the 2 mixed up. The 2 C's are 6 and 7 for me. So the communication I use, I learn from you, and then I can get it right back out to you sometimes. Sometimes I'll say, hey, I'll get back to you on that. So to that, to Doug's point too, the client I mentioned today, the one-on-one client, he's got nothing in influencing, and his executing ones are ones that can lend yourself to have problems executing, if that makes sense. Responsibility, if you don't use it the right way, can cause you not to execute, because you say yes to a whole bunch of stuff out of guilt or out of that responsibility of saying no. So we got to work with him to find things that can either mimic some influencing or make up for the fact that he doesn't have it. As I said before, he needs a little more bad cop to say nope, 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 to clients, to whatever, in some cases to some of his family members. So, yeah.
And Kurt, on a lot of these, it's what I'm finding a little difficult is it's it's hard to kind of remember all of the framework of each of the strengths. So when you're looking at it by title, okay, I have a vague idea what analytical is, but I mean, do you find it probably advantageous to, maybe take a day and just sit with each one, read the definition over and over again and kind of just keep seeing where it plays with you? Is that probably a good?
That is absolutely right. The thing the reason some people will be like, wow, how do you know every strength? And you just spew stuff out, just from meeting people, but there's some strengths that I've never had a client have, but I went through a 4-day workshop, and we really got comfortable with all of them. Sometimes if one comes up, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never had a client with that. I get into it. At the back of the last 100 pages or something of StrengthsFinder 2.0 is those detailed, explanations of all of them. So it's really just kind of marinating in some of them and really getting comfortable with them. I would definitely recommend that. Whether it's a day of doing it or every night, you're just like, I'm gonna go through 5 of these. Setting those, just take 20 minutes and do it. Because if you're like me, if I say I'm going to take a day and do it, that day keeps putting. If I just like, all right, I got to do 10 minutes. So, which we're going to get to in outcomes when we do outcomes, but yeah.
Cool.
So defining your values, and this will be really quick today, and there'll be with this. So, Roy Disney say it's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. I add to that when you know what your vision, your values, and your strengths are. And that's what I talked about, bulletproof, right? I have a trouble saying no. Sometimes it's like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Last week, I was on a plane. I had a keynote in Michigan. And I was looking at it was Monday, and I'm looking at the storm. And I'm like, we're going to be fine. And if they do order an evacuation, they're not going to order it till Wednesday or Thursday. So I get to Chicago, my layover to go to Traverse City, and my wife texts me and she goes, the governor just ordered a mandatory evacuation. I'm like, well, shit. Because what happens is they reverse all the expressways. And then because the airlines are the airlines, they just start canceling flights for no reason other than they can. So I'm like, okay, well, and especially incoming flights into Charleston, right? Not outgoing flights. So I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I'm texting with my neighbor, and he's like, yeah, they're going to start shutting down the thing, but you can fly into Savannah. Well, they've reversed the expressway, so it's going to take 14 hours. So I start weighing the cost benefit. And I go and talk to the pilot, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. So I look at my number one value is family. I got to get home to my wife and 4 kids, purpose. And so I look at that, I'm like, listen, my responsibility really makes me want to do this because there's 100 people I'm waiting for. But you know what? I'm looking at everything. Boom. I grabbed my bag and I got off that plane. And it was really tough because I had that responsibility. But, I also have a responsibility to my wife and kids. I don't want to get stuck taking 24 hours to get home. Listen, if it was a $50,000 keynote, maybe it's different. I'd rent a car and do it, and I get home quick. Anyways, but when you know those 3 things, it's easier to bounce them off there. I always have a problem, and some of you are embarking on building a business, right? My biggest problem my first 5 years was saying yes to clients who didn't value me and weren't paying me what I was worth. The big things I did was year 5, I fired half my clients. The next year I made more money with less clients. I had more freedom. I was happier. And so now when things come in your way, when projects, when clients, when opportunities, when whatever comes your way, and you're like, some of you have responsibility like I do. And it's like responsibility is making the decision, but it's not going in the direction of your values, all those things. It makes it tough. So having this roadmap at the end, you're going to see it. You're going to have it with you. That is literally, I have it on my phone. I have it on my tablet. I have it hanging up on my fridge. Well, I had it on my fridge, and then one of the kids decided to use it as artwork. It's easier to look at, like, does this fit my values, my vision, how I want to do? And it's a guiding star. It's a roadmap. So, value, a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what's important in life. And I love this is right out of the dictionary. I love that last sentence, right? Because those values, as you start doing things, I have a client and all of his values and his vision are going in one direction. And he's like, yeah, I want to do this, but we really want to fix the bathroom. We really want to redo the bathroom. And so I'm putting everything that's in my values and my vision and how I want to live my life on hold. I'm like, well, is the bathroom falling apart? No. Can you flush the toilet? No. And so all the things you're saying are important in your life are over here. But this is over here. You know, my wife and I want to redo the kitchen. But one of the things I valued was we want to travel. We want to travel with our kids. So we could have redone the kitchen and it would have been okay. And in a month, we would have been used to the kitchen and okay, that's nice to have, but we wouldn't have gone to Europe, right? So it's that vision, it's how you do it, but those values, those are the things that are so important to you in life that they help as a contribute to that guiding star to know when these things come your way, fork in the road, which road am I going to take? And there's situational versus core. There's situational values that everyone could say, yeah, and I'm going to give you an activity and there's a bunch of values and you're going to have to circle them at your core values and get them down. Some people are like, well, I circled 15 of the 25. Okay, but which ones were hell yes? Which ones were the ones that if someone put a gun to your head, you'd say, no, these are my 5. I don't care. Pull the damn trigger, right? That's the way I want you to think about this as we do this exercise. Because all of these values I put there, it's like, oh, they're all nice to have. Right? I want you to get them down to those ones where you're like, hell yes, those are my values. And basically, I really want you to start getting that hell yes or no mindset as we go. There's a lot of nice to haves. There's a lot of nice things we could do. It's like, no, what is hell yes? What is really motivating me? What do I really want in my life? If I had a magic wand and I'm like, hell yes, I want that, then that's how I want you to start making your decisions and then bringing your rational brain in to put together a process to get there. And so you saw this before. The other piece that's going to help you get up that mountain as these critics come your way, as opportunities, as other things, projects, clients, your strengths and your values combined with your vision make what I like to call you bulletproof, right? And I chose this picture because it's so soft that I didn't want to have a trigger warning, before this. So I hope all of you are okay with the candy and the picture of the gun. Doug, you're from Texas, so I know you're fine with it. Whatever gun I would have put up there. So, so I'm going to have an activity that has to do with values, core values. You get in there, you get them, send them to me. Leo, you had a question about sending me some stuff. Yeah, whatever I do as an activity, send them to me because A, they can help me keep you accountable. B, if you have a question 2 weeks from now and it's a question about something unrelated or you think is unrelated, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the best of you. I'm going to look at your strengths. And if you're making a decision that goes in the opposite direction of how you answered some of those questions, it allows me to ask you some questions to go back and look at that. Next week, we're going to talk about setting those big, audacious objectives. Well, if you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to ask me questions about anything. And I will be in touch with all of you this week.